right, we go to the phones, and our next guest, the Director of Strategic Communications for President Trump's 2020 reelection campaign, Marc Lotter. Marc, good morning. How are you today?
I am doing great, Chad. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of time today. And yesterday was a big day. You had the former vice president in Iowa. You had the president in Iowa. It seemed, Marc, that the president was bringing in some very big crowds there in Iowa.
Oh, I mean, everywhere the president goes, he brings in big crowds. I mean, just, it's unbelievable to see the amount of enthusiasm for this president and what he's done for the American people. And, I'll say, he tweeted out this morning, too, that, he's having the big announcement next Tuesday in Orlando, and that there have been 74,000 tickets requested for a venue that seats 20,000.
That's great.
That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's great. I want to ask you about some of the comments that have been made by a few of these 2020 Democrats out there. Joe Biden yesterday warned everyone in Iowa, or the 100 or so who turned out at his events, that President Trump presented a threat to the nation, and that if he's reelected, he would completely change the direction of this nation, and I don't think he meant in a good way. What is the response back to Joe Biden on that?
Well, I'll tell you, the former Secretary of Defense under President Obama and Vice President Biden wrote in his book and resaid it a few weeks ago on national television that Joe Biden has been wrong on nearly every national security and foreign policy issue over the last 40 years. So, the fact that Joe Biden thinks that the President of the United States is a threat shows me he's wrong once again. He hasn't gotten it right on China. He didn't get it right on Russia or on Iran, on, any of the major threats. And here he goes, once again, showing how wrong he can be. This is a president who's rebuilding our military, who's dealing with the threats that face our nation, whether it's unfair trade practices and malicious activity and growing threats from China, whether it's confronting Iran, the largest sponsor of terror in the world. I mean, this is a president who believes on taking on our challenges head on, not burying his head in the sand like Joe Biden.
Well, and Joe Biden, going back into the last administration, Marc, wasn't it Joe Biden who said it was a mistake to go and get, what was it, when the administration said go take bin Laden, you had Biden saying this was a mistake?
Yes, you did, and then he later tried to clarify that again. Here's the thing that we've seen about Joe Biden in just the last few weeks. He's willing to say anything right now to try to win this Democrat primary. I mean, a man who for 40 years in office opposed taxpayer-funded abortion has now flipped on that issue 4 times in the last 3 weeks. Now he supports taxpayer-funded abortion. A guy who just a few weeks ago said China's not a threat. China, what are we afraid of? China eating our lunch, and then doubled down on it. Just yesterday, again, flipped his position. Oh, no, China's a threat. I mean, so it shows you just, how out of touch he is, and the fact that he'll just say anything to try to run to the radical left to win this Democrat primary.
Marc, I want to ask you about another comment made by another contender for the 2020 Democrat primary, Kamala Harris. This is being reported by Fox News. She said, if elected, my Department of Justice would have no choice but to prosecute Trump.
I mean, it's just absolutely, it just shows you how deranged the Trump derangement syndrome is on full effect in the Democrat Party. She's now talking about prosecuting someone who the United States Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and a special counsel who spent 2 years, $40 million, had unlimited resources and expertise, could find no evidence of collusion and no obstruction, yet she believes now political differences are something that should be charged. And I'd point out that there was a story just a few days ago from a publication that actually said that when Kamala Harris was a prosecutor, she turned a blind eye to victims of church sex abuse because she didn't want to get crosswise with the church, which is a powerful political figure in San Francisco. So this is someone who would turn a blind eye to church sex abuse victims, but she believes that her political opponent should be prosecuted.
Visiting with Marc Lotter here on the Chad Hasty Show. Mark, we only have about 2 minutes left here. I want to ask you about enthusiasm. It appears to me right now President Trump has a lot of enthusiasm. You look at his rallies. I don't see any of these Democrats having any large group of enthusiasm. Even Bernie Sanders doesn't have that group or that juice, it seems, that he did in 2016. Have you noticed the same thing? Am I missing something here on the enthusiasm gap?
No, I think absolutely, and I think it's because that the radicals have taken over the Democrat Party. That the kind of more of the moderate in the middle folks, even of Democrats and independents, are left scratching their head, going, "I don't even recognize a Democrat Party anymore." When they're openly talking about taking people's private health insurance away, eliminating Medicare Advantage plans for senior citizens, endorsing Green New Deals that labor unions are saying would cost us millions of jobs. But just a perfect example of that, real quickly, was yesterday. Joe Biden in Iowa got about a couple of hundred people at his event. President Trump, as a candidate, was at that exact same venue and got 9 times that number. He had over 2,000 people in the audience to come to see him. So there's definitely an enthusiasm gap for Democrats.
Absolutely. Marc Lotter, it's always a pleasure visiting with you, and I'm sure we'll visit many more times throughout this campaign.
Looking forward to it, Chad.
Thank you. That's Marc Lotter, Director of Strategic Communications for the Trump 2020 re-elect campaign. And that is something that you notice. I mean, there's just you look at the enthusiasm levels that are out there for these Democrats, and it's not there. It's not there at all.